Ukraine is using fishing nets in the east to catch Russian drones. The nets are stretched over roads leading to hotspots, military checkpoints, and artillery positions. This is reported by the New York Times. It is noted that the nets are sown in cities that are far from the front or delivered from northern ports, and are also donated by fishermen who no longer need them. Their goal is to hinder Russian drones, which are now swarming in the skies above the front line and attacking almost anything that moves, be it an armored vehicle rushing to replenish troops' supplies or a soldier hiding in a forest belt, the article adds. Because the nets are tightly woven, they can entangle drone propellers and immobilize weapons, making them a simple but effective countermeasure against drones which are usually moving too fast to be shot down. The New York Times also recalled that the Russian Federation often uses drones on fiber optics. This makes it impossible to jam them with electronic warfare. Therefore, nets have become one of the few ways to catch drones before they start attacking. Military engineers have noticed that even a regular fishing net can stop or damage an enemy drone, said Lieutenant Colonel Maxim Kravchuk, head of the communications department of the engineering troops of the armed forces of Ukraine. According to him, nets are now being installed along the entire front line, from east to south. At the same time, Federico Borsari, an expert on technological warfare at the Center for European Policy Analysis, noted that Russia was the first to use nets in this war. This was done in 2023, but on a limited scale. Then Russian troops used nets to counter small attack quadcopters that Ukraine used to strike soldiers and vehicles, the article recalled. In turn, Ukraine is now planning to cover the main roads along the entire front line with nets, creating so-called net corridors that will allow transport to move more safely. This project is gradually changing the landscape of the Ukrainian front line. Roads that were once lined with trenches and barbed wire are now also covered with nets suspended on cables between poles. Driving along them feels like you are in a transparent tunnel, the NYT emphasized. In addition, military vehicles have also been fitted with mesh cages that allow drones to explode a few meters away from the vehicle, minimizing the impact. The use of nets reflects a defining feature of this war, where outdated but effective means of protection are often opposed by the most modern weapons. The publication notes, some Ukrainian units also still use machine guns from World War II to shoot down drones. At the same time, a representative of the Kherson City Council called on residents to carry scissors to cut fiber optic cables that may be connected to drones. From a military point of view, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a clear example of the combination of old and new, Borsari added. With potentially hundreds of kilometers of road to be covered with nets, Ukraine is now turning to charities to obtain more nets. In particular, the founder of the Swedish non-profit organization Operation Change, Ludwig Ramestam, said that this year the organization has donated 250 tons of nets. We are giving these nets a second life, he stressed, joking that his organization plans to empty the harbors.
Former Russian Transport Minister Roman Starovoyt has been found dead in his car with a gunshot wound, investigators have confirmed. Starovoyt was dismissed hours earlier by order of President Vladimir Putin after Ukrainian drone strikes disrupted air traffic in Russia. Svetlana Petrenko, a spokeswoman for Russia's investigative committee, said on July 7 that Starovoyt's body was found in his personal car in the Odintsovo district of the Moscow region. She stressed that the main possibility was suicide. Putin appointed Starovoyt's deputy and former governor of the Kursk region, Andrei Nikitin, as interim transport minister. While Russian officials have not linked Starovoyt's dismissal to the aviation crisis, analysts say the timing raises some questions about potential scapegoating. Russia's transport ministry said on July 6 that up to 400 flights across the country had been cancelled. 171 flights were cancelled at Sheremetyevo Airport in Moscow and 90 flights were cancelled at Pulkovo in St. Petersburg, with delays exceeding 2 hours due to Ukrainian drones. This was met with displeasure in the Kremlin. The Russian Defense Ministry said last night that 91 Ukrainian drones were shot down. On July 7, Russian forces launched strikes on Ukraine. Ukraine announced that 75 of 101 Russian drones had been shot down. According to the Shot Telegram channel, a gun was found near Roman Starovoyt's body. MASH writes that Starovoyt shot himself with a prize gun he received from the leadership of the Ministry of Internal Affairs in 2023. His body was found in his house in the village of Myakonino. According to preliminary information, Starovoyt's suicide may be related to a possible criminal case. Sources say that the former head of the Kursk region, Alexei Smirnov, who previously worked as his deputy, testified against Roman Starovoyt, the Baza Telegram channel wrote. The Kommersant newspaper also wrote, citing its source, that the defendants in the case of the theft of at least 1 billion rubles allocated for the construction of protective structures on the border with Ukraine have testified against Starovoyt, and it is alleged that Smirnov, the former governor of the Kursk region, is among them. Andrei Kartopolov, head of the State Duma Defense Committee, confirmed the information about the former minister's death to RTVA, saying it happened a very long time ago. Russian President Vladimir Putin dismissed Starovoyt from his post as Minister of Transport on the morning of July 7. Starovoyt had held this post since May 2024. Before that, he was the governor of the Kursk region. The reason for his dismissal was not disclosed. Ukraine's drone attacks caused major chaos in Russian air traffic over the weekend. The largest airports serving Moscow and St. Petersburg were among those forced to limit activities on Sunday. Airlines lost about 20 billion rubles or $253.7 million due to the collapse of air traffic on July 5 to 6 due to Ukrainian drone attacks. The costs of canceling flights in the first 24 hours at 3 airports are estimated at 4 to 6 billion rubles. This is reported by the Kommersant newspaper. As of 1800 hours on July 6, more than 537 flights have been cancelled at Sheremetyevo, Pulkovo and Strogino airports, and over 376 have been delayed by more than 2 hours. It is noted that the airline loses from 15 to 23 million rubles from the cancellation of one flight of a Boeing 737-800 aircraft in a 2-class layout. This amount includes the costs of airport services at average rates, crew work and fuel. Thus, in the first day, the cancellation of flights at 3 airports cost the companies 3.9 to 5.9 billion rubles. It is specified that, on average, the amount of additional costs for airlines due to widespread disruptions to flight schedules in Russia per day could reach 20 billion rubles. Earlier it was reported that air traffic between Moscow and St. Petersburg could be restricted again. Pulkovo Airport introduced a carpet regime for the reception and release of civil aircraft. Due to restrictions on the operation of airports in central Russia, more than 500 flights were postponed or cancelled. The largest number of cancellations and delays occurred at Sheremetyevo Airport, about 200 flights. About 100 flights were postponed or cancelled at Pulkovo. About 50 flights were postponed at Vnukovo, and about 30 flights were postponed in Sochi. Passengers were recommended to travel by train as an alternative. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said 6 Ukrainian drones were shot down as they approached the capital, but he did not provide details on possible damage. The governor of the Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, said Ukrainian drones injured 2 civilians near the border area. The Ukrainian attacks followed several major bombings by Russian forces in Kiev, which killed at least 2 people and injured dozens more.